Welcome to You Don't Know, the podcast where we courageously go where everyone else probably already has, admitting that we don't know anything. We used to have all the answers, just ask us. But now we are thriving in the chaos of endless questions. For the record, we are not professionals and are totally just making this up as we go, but hey, we are thriving. If you've listened to prior episodes of our podcast, you'll notice we have mostly been dedicated to education, taking social issues around us, talking about the problem, and hearing from the people who have dedicated their lives to finding solutions to those problems. But on this episode, and some others to follow, we've decided to show a bit of the prequel, if you will. The conversations that happen, which ultimately lead to curiosity and the education that becomes our episodes. We've been having these conversations amongst ourselves for a very long time and think they are absolutely necessary for developing that empathy muscle we've talked about so often. So on this episode, I sat down with my dear friend Rebekah, a lifelong creative and core member of the Wayfind Collective. One of the first things I saw in Becca, and one of my favorite things, was her unequivocal and absolute commitment to the belonging of the other being me and you. Making sure every single person feels valued, heard, and understood. Don't get me wrong, girl has some fight, but she still is committed to the welcoming. She is one of the biggest partiers I've ever known and can turn even the most mundane moment into something unforgettable. Enter a conversation about an election result. After Trump was announced the victor of the 2024 presidential election, we were surprised to find that many people around us were, at a minimum, confused and mostly judgmental of the big feelings from people who didn't vote for the winning party. So we came together for a little discussion to attempt to clarify some things that we think are imperative to understand in order for us to have healthy neighborhoods. We hope you enjoy this episode where Becca and I break down her, drumroll please, post-election creative outlet. Today I'm here with my friend Rebekah.
Hello.
Rebekah.
And
she and I have been processing hardcore for years now. About everything. So anytime anything rage-worthy happens, we are raging together. Mm-hmm. It's a good time.
It is.
And we've recently had a lot to rage about.
We have.
I don't know that we've ever not had a lot to rage about.
No, we can find it about anything.
Yeah, we can.
Yeah, the school drop-off line. I mean, it's endless, really.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
We are right now currently in an election season.
Yes.
And that has been a lot of constant conversations and heartache and struggles and suffering and all the things.
Mm-hmm.
So last Thursday, was it?
Yes.
We had a moment together.
We did.
And it was in response to, we were catching each other up on the headlines of the day. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I had seen was the protests at a university campus in Texas.
Yes.
With all kinds of racial slurs and
anti-anything,
yes.
Really, it seemed like.
Anything outside of what people would consider the right way.
Mm-hmm. I see what you did there.
Uh-huh. And then you sent a headline that I had not seen. What was that one?
Oh, the text messages, yes, that people had been receiving. And I saw that it was mainly coming out of Seattle. And then it quickly seemed like it was going across the whole nation of basically Black women receiving text messages. And I think it went on past women, but initially it seemed like it was targeted toward women. That they had been placed back in a plantation, that they needed to, report back, and all of this, just vile rhetoric.
Report back for what?
Report back for slavery,
picking cotton.
Picking cotton specifically,
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Yep.
Just vile.
And so
where did you see, read it as a headline? Did you see it on TikTok? Where did you see it?
I believe when I first saw that one, it was on Instagram. And then I did see it all over TikTok where people were showing their message that they had received.
And what was the general consensus of the people who had received it? Like how were they acting?
I mean, like physical body pain, coming out of your body, rage. I can't really imagine, but I mean, just vile, vile.
So we were both raging, to put it lightly. We were like, what is happening? And this was post-election results that both of these headlines had come, like, within 48 hours.
Yes. I don't want it to make it seem like I think, or that like this is because of the campaign, or that, you know, that all conservative people think that this is appropriate to do. I think the problem, and where it hits me in the gut, is that people, because of the result, feel as though it's okay to do these type things.
Yeah.
So to vote in what I would feel is a bully, all the bullies go, oh, okay, I feel empowered now.
Yeah.
They get away with it, or I can get away with it.
Right.
And that's where I start to get nervous.
Yeah. Okay, so let's set the stage just a little bit.
Okay.
We are in North Georgia.
Yes.
We are in the heart of the Bible Belt, deep south.
Deep south.
Deep south. And I would say a huge majority of the people around us, including friends and family, people we used to go to church with, people we, our kids go to school with, our neighbors, our literal neighbors, are conservative and, conservative.
Conservative, yeah.
What are the differences that we've seen with the rise and fall and re-rise of Trump?
Well, I think originally, the first time, it just kind of felt like it, maybe something new. You didn't really think too much about it. I didn't feel too much about it. Well, then over time, obviously within those 4 years, there was a lot of things that happened, a lot of fear. And again, back to people feeling empowered to be the bully because of that is where the breakdown begins. And so that continued on for 4 years, and we saw that play out over and over and over until this huge grand exit that he had. And then it was like amnesia for the last 4 years. And I'm not even gonna say that I feel like the last 4 years have just been woohoo,
hunky-dory.
But by comparison, and so it just seems like now we are headed back towards
the chaos of the 2020s.
The 2020s. And it's like, do we not remember what that was?
Yeah.
Beyond a world outbreak of COVID and all of that, that's also in a vacuum. So even aside from that, it was also pure chaos. I mean, it's like we've decided to go back to the narcissistic boyfriend. Like, we forgot what that was like.
It's an abusive relationship.
Yeah, and we're just like, oh, okay, let's go back and try that again. Surely it wasn't that bad.
Right.
And that's scary to me.
Right. Well, when we see people, when we see narcissists, when we see people who thrive on making other people feel less than, when we see people who they love the 1-2 punch of having the upper hand, a little bit more power, a little bit more resources, a little bit more influence. What we see when we see people like that are other people who like those qualities flock to them.
Yeah.
And they all kind of thrive together in this little wheelhouse. And that's kind of what we experienced before. And what you're saying is the breakdown comes where people feel like those kinds of actions are okay.
Right.
And on the flip side of that, of the people who feel like it's okay to bully people, to say whatever is in your gut, to have all of these inclinations about people who are different than you, is the flip side of that is the people who you're bullying. People who feel less than, people who feel nervous around you, people who feel scared of what you might do next. And so just watching that play out in our communities, in our neighborhoods is not okay. We're not okay with that.
No. Yeah. No, not okay with that.
Right. So thus the reason for our rage. And so we both took like a 2-hour break, not on purpose. It just a couple hours went by, and then we started texting again. And I was like, in my rage, I have written something. I don't think I can post it to Facebook, but I wrote it. And you were like, me too.
Yes.
You had written something too. And so that's what we want to talk about today, is what you wrote.
Okay.
So let's do it.
Okay.
So when you first wrote this, tell me where you were at in your mental space.
Okay, so I think you know how you have like an inner dialogue, and
Yes.
so I'm walking around cleaning kitchen, rage cleaning, doing whatever, and my mind is just going, and I'm having this inner dialogue with myself, and I'm just thinking about all the people that I wish that we could help, that we could speak for, that we could all of that was going through my mind, and then it came down to I can only speak from my own perspective. It's not appropriate for me to speak for somebody else. I can rage we can all rage alongside people. We can vote to help these things. We can do, there are many things that we can do. Trying to take on somebody else's experience and write from that perspective didn't feel right to me, because
Didn't feel authentic.
it didn't feel authentic.
Right.
And I think people could easily then read what I said and
Have issue.
Yeah. Argue.
Which, to be fair, like, we constantly practice trying to put ourselves in somebody else's shoes.
Yes.
Which we can't fully ever understand, but trying to empathize with somebody else's life experience or scenario is a healthy practice.
Right.
It's a good thing.
It is.
But then thinking about writing
Yes.
that experience doesn't feel
That didn't
authentic.
feel right. So then I had to switch, and I said, okay, what's my experience? Why do I also feel the way that I feel, and where does that come from? And then stories of just my childhood, my family, my existence started to just come through my head. And so there it went. And where I landed, and the start of what I wrote was, I was raised by strong women.
Yeah.
All around me, strong women. And so in the moment, I just felt that it was appropriate to look back to them.
Yeah.
And no, this is why I am who I am, is through them, from their experiences. And so that became my experience. And so that's where it came from.
Yeah. All right. Let's hear it. So I think a good way to do it is you read, and I'll probably have questions along the way, if that's okay.
That's perfect.
Okay.
That's perfect. Okay. So I was raised around strong women. My mother, a nurse, taught me that you can raise successful children and kick ass in the workplace. I never doubted her love for me because she worked hard. She is beautiful, present, kind, and always strong. She taught us the art of being a woman, seeing Jesus in all people, and having conversations that productively move society forward. My paternal grandmother.
Okay, wait, let's stop at your mom.
Okay.
So, and you weren't raised by a single mom.
No.
You had a mom and a dad present.
Yeah, very present.
And you had, we realized this in our community recently.
Oh, yes.
About your family. Your dad was super present, but outside of your dad,
Oh, right.
what kind of male influence did you have?
None.
That is so wild.
None.
That is so wild. So, like, we're talking about a girl raised around girls, by girls, and a dad.
And a dad. Yeah.
But so many strong women in a place where patriarchy reigns.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Let's keep going.
Okay. My paternal grandmother, Mima, was a force to be reckoned with. She embodied beauty and strength. Mima was born at a time when women were not prioritized. She had 6 children in 5 years with no twins, quickly underwent a full hysterectomy, and was abandoned by a system that failed her. After years of mental health crises, electric shock therapies, and long stints in mental institutions, it was finally discovered that hormone replacement therapy was all she needed. Women's health was not a priority, and funding and research were limited. Turning to ancient rituals for guidance was often deemed witchcraft. This version of her I only know through stories, from young sons and a daughter left grappling to understand. A system had to be upheld, and my family saw the consequences. When I knew Mima, she was brilliant. She would read the dictionary for fun. In fact, she would read anything for fun, a trait that runs deep in my sisters. She taught us through action and education we can do anything, and that the world is beautiful beyond our small existence. She instilled in us a love of challenging, loud conversations, bulldog football, and how to cook damn good food. She spent a decade living in Saudi Arabia when my grandfather took an engineering job, and stories of her strong-willed personality come alive in this era. She embodied the trad life, yet also had full autonomy, a beautiful balance that lives in me today.
Oh, man. We're going to spend a minute on this one.
Okay.
Let's talk about Mima.
Let's talk about Mima.
Oh, my gosh.
She was wild in all the best ways.
So what is your memory of her?
I mean, Mima took no shit. She was in charge. She was in charge of everything around her. And you knew it, and she would tell you. She spoke it.
6 children in 5 years to this man.
So my dad and his brother are 10 months apart.
Back-to-back babies. You know, I read once that it takes your body 6 years to fully recover from one pregnancy.
I know.
So she had 6 children in 5 years.
In 5 years. So
she never recovered from those
She never
pregnancies.
recovered. And then essentially they just did a hysterectomy. So
still young.
Still young. I mean, she was probably 24 at this age.
Holy crap.
So, yeah.
And total hysterectomy, ovaries, and everything.
Total hysterectomy.
Oh my gosh. So you're taking her hormones away from her body.
You took everything.
Holy crap.
Which, again, at the time, unaware. So, and probably just like, oh no, we know best, you know, without. So it sent her into a mental spiral.
Yeah.
She reverted back to childhood sometimes. She would care for dolls, like just hard things that then your small children are having to have to figure out. I mean, they're left to try to figure out what's going on, and then come to find out she just needed hormones. She was having a hormone imbalance.
Massive
Hormone imbalance. Yeah. And shock therapy, that was a big thing of it. So my grandma had a love for cooking. She was she was in restaurant business as well, which is where my dad and a lot of his brothers all are in the restaurant business as well, hotel business, like all that type thing. Hospitality. So she was a big hospitable person.
Yes.
And when she was put back into homes, mental institutions at long stints at the hospital, she wasn't there to do all of, those things that she loved. And so my, dads and the brothers, they would all step in because my grandfather was a terrible cook. So there's always stories about that. Like they had to figure out something because she wasn't there to do it. Yeah. So, but also she loved it.
Yeah.
So she loved to cook and she was great.
Oh my goodness. And you probably can't do that when you're in an institution.
No.
They don't let you have access to the kitchen.
No.
That's my guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, let's take people who are unwell for reasons we don't understand and throw them in places where they can't do anything that they are creative at or good at. And let's
watch that.
Put some chemicals in their body and hope that they get better.
Yep.
So stupid.
Shock their brain or tap it and watch the blood just come out and be like, maybe maybe we're free now. When I think about how she would feel about politics today or how she would vote, the point is mute. It's not practical to look back at a generation and try to impose our thoughts on them. What matters is how I take what I learned from her and move forward to make her proud in my progress.
Okay, we got to stop there because I think that's so important. Elaborate, say more.
Okay, well,
what are you saying when you say the point's moot? Like it's not practical to look back at a generation.
I think part of where that came from is when the election was over and the next day and I was like, what do I do? What's going to happen here? And I think about my grandma, who was in the South, Jim Crow South. And just like as perspective, I always have to remind myself this, like my father grew up where there were segregated water fountains.
Yeah.
So it's like, we want to act like this is some kind of far off situation. And it's always important to say it is not. Yeah. This is not even broken a generational cycle yet.
Right.
Like so anyways.
Still happening.
Yeah. That's a whole other thing. Anyway, so I had that on my heart and I just kept thinking, it really doesn't matter how she would feel now. And I could view her as a very strong-willed person. And if she were sitting here today, she might say, oh, I'm vote for Donald Trump.
Yeah.
And okay. Okay, that's fine. I can only take what was given and move forward.
Right. I think it's interesting, too, that as we're talking through the women who have influenced you and the things that they have done differently in their generations and had to overcome, and I think it's important for people to realize
that people who have experienced any form of oppression connect on that level.
Yeah.
And so just think about it, like if you've ever been in a horrific car accident that, like, you know, put you in the hospital for a very long time, and you ever come across somebody who had a similar scenario, near death experience, hospital for a long time, you can connect with that person in a way that you may not even be able to connect with your spouse or your best friend or your child or whoever, because you guys resonate on this point. When people experience oppression, and oppression meaning like limited things that they can do in their own neighborhoods and jobs and society because someone with more power tells them they can't. I mean, that's just like a grand sweep of women have not always been allowed to work or have their own money or have their own bank accounts or have their own credit cards or vote or et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
And we're
like our own parent, like again, our own mothers.
Yeah.
I mean, this was true of them.
Yeah.
Where they're, you know.
Well, same thing for Black America. They haven't always been able to vote. They haven't always been able to work jobs they want, live in places they wanted to because they were told they couldn't. Why? Because of the color of their skin. So people who have experienced oppression find connection among each other. And that's why when someone who is a bully to any people group, whether it's special needs communities or LGBTQIA plus communities or women, and I know people roll their eyes, and so many women, like there's Women for Trump and all the things, they love him, they say the things, but the man has been found guilty of assaulting women, a woman.
Yeah.
And there are many more, and you can choose not to believe it or whatever, but if 1 in 4 women in this country experiences sexual assault, 1 in 4, and most of them before the age of 18. So we're talking about childhood trauma. And have you ever, if you are a woman who's experienced this, or can you imagine being a woman who's experienced this at the hands of a man who has more power than you, and then that man becoming a pastor or becoming a school principal or a teacher, or winning at anything in life that puts them in charge of other women and or children? Can you imagine the defeat that might feel like? That is what 1 in 4 women in our nation feel. And I'm speaking in absolutes again.
Right.
But feel when someone who is a bully and who is mean to women and who talks down about women and who has abused women, assaulted women, gets the most powerful position in the country. And so anyone who has experienced oppression, like women, is going to feel angst at that because no one likes when the bully wins.
Right.
Nobody feels comfortable in that scenario except other bullies. And I'm speaking in absolutes.
Right. But yeah.
And if we can just understand each other from that perspective of like, I understand that you want to protect your business. I understand that you need tax cuts. I agree with those things. I don't want to give more money to the government. At the same time, the homeless population is growing by leaps and bounds on a daily basis because the economy is outrageous and no one can afford to live here in North Georgia anymore.
And as a caveat, to think that that is something that changes within a 4-year time span on both sides is absolutely ridiculous. That goes all the way back. I mean, we can put this all the way back to Reagan and beyond. These are 40-year problems here that are compounding. So that's not to just say, oh, okay, because now if we elect the different person, then we're going to get out of these things. And I would hope that we would know that to be true. So then why would we pick a bully? I don't. That's just like a hard stop for me. I don't know. It's just a hot take. I don't understand. Like, these things take years and years. And again, if we're talking about generational issues where our parents, lived in a Jim Crow South, and it does not change in a 40, 50. I mean, I guess my dad's 70 now, so I still want to think that he's like 40, but that's me. So
millennials,
my bad.
30 years ago is the 70s. It's fine.
But still, as a 70-year-old man like that, these things are just now happening. And there has not been a lot of change in his lifetime. So 4 years is not going to make a difference. But to stand up and just say, we think that that's the that's really the best option for 4 years is to pick a bully, it's a dagger to the heart.
Yeah,
it is
hurts.
a dagger to the heart.
And maybe that can help people understand when you see people raging and weeping and the gnashing of teeth, like losing their minds after the announcement of Donald Trump as president. It's not because their side lost.
Mm-hmm.
It's because they're really nervous about what's to come.
What's to come, yeah.
Are we going backwards?
Right.
And this is why it's really important to know history and why I love Rebekah, because she loves history. She loves government. The girl watches freaking every Fox News, CNN, MSNBC.
That's probably triggering for people. They're probably like, that's what's wrong with her.
But she like studies the election cycle, and she studies all these different positions and what they do and their influence and what they can change, what they can't change. And so I'm constantly like, Becca, and we never talk on the phone.
No.
Becca,
Millennial.
yes, please tell me what this means. Because I do not study politics. I do not study government. I love history, but not political history. And so it's so important to know this stuff. It's so important to know that these things were happening in our parents' generation. These things were happening in our grandparents' situation because it's not so far removed.
Mm-mm.
Things that have been voted on that changed history can be reversed. Mm-hmm. We can go backwards.
We can go backwards.
And that's scary. But also, no point in like trying to think about what they would do differently.
No.
Because
everything it's different.
Everything's changed.
Everything has changed.
They didn't have the internet.
Right.
Much less social media, much less TikTok, much less.
Correct.
They didn't have those things.
Yeah. Education, I mean, obviously was more limited in the way that you receive it. I still think people were highly educated.
Yes.
But just the way that you received the education or the information was obviously much slower.
Yes.
And so that comes into play on how people process.
Yes.
We could probably process things much quicker now, and I would hope come to a better conclusion faster than what they were able to. What might have taken them 40 years to realize we might be able to do in a year time span.
Yeah.
So,
well, and like just your exposure to people who are different than you is so different now.
Right.
And so now you can open TikTok and you can hear a Palestinian perspective and a Black American perspective and an African, like from Africa American perspective. And you can hear people who are, 3 generations ahead of you and 3 generations behind you. Like we have instant exposure to people who are different than us. It's if you choose to listen to that or not.
Right.
Or seek it out.
Right. Right. And a lot of the times, I mean, I think the empathy comes in obviously when you know people who are different from you, exactly as you're saying. I mean, I grew up where queer people were not, there is still a lot of controversy, but it was in my life, my personal experience was very controversial inside my own self about what that looked like. The second that you become deep friends with people in the queer community, your entire perspective shifts. And this happens in all realms of life. Yeah. I mean, that happens with anything. Oh,
you become a parent and consider what my child be. And then all of a sudden you're open to things that you never thought you might be.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you see, and it does break down those barriers to invest in people and to hear their thought, where they come from or whatever. And I find it sad that it has to be that way. I mean, I love human connection and I love people, but the fact that we have to go that deep to then just look at to give is still, an apology that I have to keep making over and over and over.
You feel guilt and
I
shame
feel
for
guilt
it.
and shame for that.
But also I think it's a muscle too. The more that you try and understand someone whose experience is radically different than yours, the easier it is to be able to do it with more people.
Yes.
But you have to start there.
Yes.
If you are in a bubble and you're only surrounded with people who believe like you, think like you, look like you, function like you, you're going to struggle to even do that one time. Yeah. But once you do it once, the second time becomes easier. By the 6th time, it's second nature. Yes. But you have to make the decision to do that, to practice that.
To practice it. Yeah. And the way you interpret speaking of back to the politics a little bit, mixed with also how obviously we were raised evangelical. And so the Bible was like a huge, obviously, part of our existence and still is to this day. And it comes with a lot of interpretation and how people interpret it, and the way that you then start to change when you meet people and you see their perspective. The way that you interpret the scripture is completely different, and you can't go back once you see it. And I will say that also, because all things that are written are up for debate. The Constitution is the same way. Politics is the same way. The Constitution is very short. It's not. These are not in-depth, long things that need to. And it was written also not as long, obviously not as old as the Bible, but it was written a long time ago. People say things differently. We don't always know their intent. The point of it is that we are supposed to argue about it. We are supposed to have the conversation, and then we're supposed to look at the people around us and say, how does this help the next person?
Help or hurt.
And then make a decision based off that. And so if you want to continue to interpret the scriptures and the Constitution in a way that is going to bring people down, you can argue that all day long, and you're gonna be. It's okay. It's not okay. Not okay is okay, but I mean that's what it's gonna be. And so I just choose to not do it that way.
Right.
That's just my personal take. They're not absolutes, either one of them, which is another thing we're always trying to unlearn.
Well, and I'm gonna pounce on the Bible comment, because you're going to have people who say, no, the Bible's absolute truth, and the Bible, there is a correct way to interpret it because your denomination teaches you that there's a correct way, and here is the correct interpretation. And that is how I was raised. And I will say, in my own experience, my own life experience, as of the last 5 to 7 years, I have been learning how to read the scriptures. Speaking of understanding history and considering the people of the past, how the authors, how an ancient Hebrew Jew living in the Middle East under Roman occupation, what their words might have meant. What they wanted to convey when they wrote the words on the papyrus, or their scribe did, and to the audiences that they intended for them to hear. And let me tell you, interpretations do not stand by how we interpret now. What they intended is not how we interpret. And that's a problem.
It is.
It's a problem when people base their entire existence around understanding some written words that they think mean this one thing, and it cannot mean something to us that it didn't mean to them. And to look at what the author, as best as we can, understanding context, cultural context, historical context, changes in language, multiple changes in language, understanding what they intended is so important, and we're not doing it. We're not doing it well.
No.
My hope is that is how we will move forward. But scripture looks very, very different when you look at it the way they looked at it, and you hear it or try to hear it the way they heard it. And it doesn't come to absolutes.
No.
It almost never comes to absolutes. No. They are not putting their stake in the ground and saying, you must believe these things. They're fighting about it constantly and working it out amongst themselves and trusting that the Spirit is going to help them along the way. And that is, I feel like, where we live now. And we're happy here.
And it's okay. And it's also okay to, like, we're verbal processors. Sometimes the what comes out is not exactly how you feel. You have the ability to keep changing that forever and ever. That's the idea. And so I think a lot of times in the way that we were raised and grown up in here, people don't want to have the conversation, or if you feel differently, then they're shutting it down, and you can't. And so it's stopping this back and forth. And that could be said, that's on both sides. That's across the board. Like, it's hard to have conversations like that. But again, the muscle memory, if you just keep doing it, if you put yourself in the situation and know, we shouldn't always have to, start with an apology or say, I believe, or I think. Like, we should look at other people and say, I hope that they have the ability to change and grow, and that we're not looking at people with absolutes. And that's for me to also remember when having conversation. But the disservice for both the Constitution, and I do not like putting these things together, and the scripture, it is highly important to try to think about what they were saying then and what that means now, and what the common goal was, and how we get to that collectively.
Well, and what they couldn't say because their brains had not conceived of a world where before,
No.
humans were not indentured servants.
Correct.
Like that wasn't a possibility
Correct.
in their minds.
Correct.
So they couldn't say the things that we're saying now and the things that we're scared to go back to because they didn't have a potential for those thoughts.
Correct. You can't. Yeah, exactly.
So it's taking the overarching, when they say, I mean, what's one of the main things from the Constitution? It's,
I mean, I'm thinking like the Second Amendment. If we
Yes.
just want to,
Okay.
just kind of, I mean, there's 1,000,
Yes.
but I think to just kind of make it easy for people to understand,
Yeah.
or not that people can't understand. I just mean for this conversation
right.
to understand. If you think about their understanding of what weaponry is now, and also why they put that in there. What
Yeah.
was the reasoning
Yeah.
that they were so adamant that people be able to protect themselves?
Right.
And again, that's up for debate, obviously.
Yes,
We
yeah.
can argue that back
Right.
and forth, and we can both be what we think is correct, because
Yeah.
it's not an absolute answer. And
Yeah.
so that's the point. But I feel deeply, and what I want is for people to stop looking at just the verbiage,
The words.
and to come up
taking
from
them
air
as-
and look around and
Yes.
say, is this working?
Yeah.
Is it working?
Yeah.
And the thing is like, France has rewritten their constitution, I don't even know how many times. Like
Yeah.
and that might not be a good system either. And obviously
Right.
those countries are smaller. Like there's so
Yes.
many things that come into account when you talk about this. But it's worth considering, like, why do we hold on to something like that? And we do the same thing in the scripture. It's the same thought processes. And why can't we just look around at our fellow humans and say, who cares?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do better.
Yes. Yeah.
Do
yeah.
better. It's
Right,
not
right.
working.
Yeah.
Come up with a better system.
Yes.
We're not going back. Why?
Yeah.
What's the point?
Yeah.
So I don't know, but it's up for argument.
It is. And I want to, that could be its own episode as well.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's keep going with
Okay.
your post.
It's not enough to simply carry the traits of strong women within us. We must take the power, embody the passion, and make a change. Thinking about the obstacles my mother overcame to have a successful nursing career and the struggles my Mima endured just to have access to basic health care, I know I can't sit quietly. I feel defeated by yesterday as the election. My spirit is broken, but it will not remain there. These women have proven that wallowing is never the answer. We must keep having hard conversations, advocate for the oppressed, and demand that women, the queer community, and immigrants deserve a system that will not fail them. These are life and death issues that stop generational trauma and move families toward beauty. We must never stop reading, learning, and talking. We must sit around tables and have hard conversations, not just for ourselves, but for our daughters, our sons, and our neighbors. May we never look to go back.
Okay, let's look at that one sentence. We must sit around tables and have hard conversations. We have talked about this endlessly.
Yes,
This is how our community began.
it is.
I had been kicked out of a church, and you had your own issues within faith community that you were dealing with.
Yep.
And we decided to meet once a week over beer at a local brewery and talk about faith-based things. Anything, but I mean, we live faith-based lives. So we'll talk about anything,
Yeah.
but through our own understandings and processings that we were
Yes.
doing and undoing on a
Yep.
daily basis.
Yep.
And why do we think that is so important? Sitting at those tables together and talking through things.
Well, you come to a place where you realize, and people say this all the time, and it is true, we are more alike than we are different. And that's worth saying on repeat because it is the truth at our core. And so what we did realize is that we had fundamental differences. And when I look back on those early days, I just think, holy cow, who were we?
Yeah. We were so different.
We were
then.
so different. We were so different. And collectively, the group was different, and we're still different. And that's okay. But to have the conversation, you come to a realization, and what you do is you learn to trust that person in front of you, and you trust that they have wholeheartedly put the effort in to get to where they are. And you assume the best in them, and then you know that they assume the best in you. And so you can have good, balanced conversation with those things on the table. And that's muscle memory. It takes time. It takes relationship. And I wouldn't even say that we can do that with all people at all times. But once you find it, it's worth holding on to. But it also does help you come up for air and look around. And you do try to see that in other people that you don't know. You try to take that core knowledge that it's inside your body, the way you feel now about the world around you, and you hope for the best in other people as well, and that they've made a good decision. And that even goes for women who voted for Trump in my life. I hope that there was something, and I would love to have the conversation. I would love to sit down at a table and have a conversation and just say, how did you arrive where you are? And the truth is that that doesn't happen a lot to sit down and have that kind of conversation. So it was vitally important to us to have this, have these conversations. Yeah.
And we didn't know it was going to develop into what it became.
No.
Like, we are a community. We have a whole community of people who we now do life with daily, all the time, because we were able to sit at a table together and ask really hard questions.
With our differences. We sat at a table where we were very different.
And we are still. Yeah. In our community, we are very different. We voted different. Yeah. All of us.
Absolutely.
And we, even in my own home, I would say my husband probably knows this election who I voted for, because I found a little loophole that I did, and I was so excited to share it. But because I really struggled to vote for either party. It was a very, very difficult election for me.
Yes.
But in previous elections, he doesn't know who I vote for. We talk through politics. We talk about things we like and we don't like. We fight sometimes, but he doesn't care what I do, and I don't care what he does. I trust him and his gut to make his own decisions, and he does the same for me. And that's what we do in our community. Yeah. And we still love each other, knowing that people voted very differently. Right. And we still respect their decision making, and we respect their process. We've seen them change in profound ways because And we know that that's possible because we've changed in profound ways. Yes. And maybe next election we'll all be on the same page. Maybe we won't. Probably we won't, because we're living very different lives. Yes. But together. Yes. And we hold space for each other together.
Absolutely.
And so we do that as a community. I think it's really important that you have people in your life who you can sit down with and talk through hard things. And I think it's really important that you make an effort to do that. Mm-hmm. I really, really, really struggle when people are like, oh, I don't talk politics, or I hate politics, or I won't talk politics with friends and family, that kind of thing. I understand the sentiment. It's hard when things get icky, when we disagree, but learn to disagree well. Like, you have to practice. You have to build the muscles, like you're talking about. Yes. And to sitting down with people who are not in your community. Yeah. Which you just said you would love to do.
Yeah, I would love to do that.
I mean, that's kind of a challenge, is find someone who believes and voted differently. And I don't know how you're going to figure it out. My question is always, are you open? Can you be curious? Mm-hmm. Are you open to hearing somebody who radically disagrees with you? And if they are, we can have a good conversation. If they are very set in their ways and they're pretty verbally against anyone who believes different, that's going to be a really fun conversation. Yes. So, like, feel them out a little bit, and then go have a beer together, or a coffee together, or an appetizer together, or whatever. Go sit at a park together, and just come with questions and ask your questions, and then let them ask questions and reciprocate the whole process. Yes. It's so important that we do this together.
It is. And I also, on top of that as well, think that it's okay to do it in a public forum as well, to have hard conversations that way. I'm also an advocate for that, because that's the way that life is going. Yep. And so to learn how to do that well, it's not going away. And so to just say, sit at the table, there's time for that. There's time for all of these things, and we can do all of them, and we can do them well. And I think that it is okay on a public platform to state how you feel,
disagree,
and to disagree and to question people. Because honestly, I mean, just the way that life goes in the day in and day out, it is hard to find time to sit down with other people. And,
It is.
and it is important, and we should do it. But also, you meet people and see different things, like, you know, on social media and in a digital way, that it's okay. I think it's okay to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, you have Substack, it's endless where you can find conversation with people
you maybe don't know
that
and
you
will
would
never
know.
Or people you do know, Facebook, Instagram.
Right. Or outside of our culture here in the South, you know, to reach out to a person in a different location is also important. And I think it's fun. It's fun to have conversation, and it doesn't have to be bad.
Right. It doesn't have to
It doesn't have to be deemed like some kind of, you know, you're not going to fall down into some kind of hole.
Yes.
And if you're coming up for air with real people, and it's balance. It's like all things in life.
Right.
Like everything comes with, you know, balance and
right. And I will say, from my upbringing in an evangelical community where you believe what you believe and that's the truth, and your group of people are the people with the truth.
Yeah. Somehow
it is
in the whole world.
Yeah, it's very hard at first to sit down with people who think, look, talk, live differently than you, because your gut reaction, your instinct is going to be to correct them and to tell them what the right answer is. And we're telling you that's not it. That's not the point. The point is to find human connection and to try to love your neighbor really well in ways that are difficult for you.
And for me, another hot take would be, if you were making it harder for somebody to have shalom in their life, that's probably not it. That's probably not the way you want to go. And I feel like we inherently do know what that is. And sometimes that means that it is going to put you might lose something because they need something, and that's okay. It's okay to be okay with that. Like, to not just hold on to yourself. And we say all the time, me and mine against you and yours. It doesn't have to be that way.
Right. You don't have to think of everybody else as the other side.
Right.
Different they're the other ones. If you can get rid of those dichotomies in your brain and just think of us, we are humans. We are North Georgians. We are women. We are neighbors. We are mothers to kids in the Hall County school system.
Right.
You know, figure out ways to stop the othering in your brain.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
As soon as you do the tribal thing where you're like, me and my people. Who are your people? Your family? Me and my people. The Baptist church up the road. Me and my people. White conservatives. Me and my people. People who voted for Trump. As soon as you do that, you're going to end up hurting somebody else, like you're talking about.
Yes.
If what you're doing is not allowing someone else to experience wholeness, that's a problem. So, and to stop that, you have to stop the tribalism in your mind.
You have to. And that might mean, for a minute, voting against yourself or what you think. Sometimes that might be what you have to do. Take a stance and say, I can see your side. I understand that for me, that would be the best choice, but I'm choosing to not do that right now for the sake. It's like triage.
Yeah.
Like you have to triage.
Somebody's bleeding out.
Somebody is bleeding out.
And if it's not you,
then I might, who might?
Yeah.
And I might have a bunch of bandages, and I'm like, but what if I start bleeding out? And it's like, you'll get more bandages.
Yes.
Share your bandages.
There's enough for everyone.
There's enough. You're going to be okay. Sometimes you just might have to do that. And that might be vote against what you think is the best for you.
Everything you've ever known.
Everything you've ever known.
Everything your parents and grandparents taught you. Good luck.
Yes.
We have broached this territory, and it is sticky ground.
Things are still raw for me. I'm trying to do all of the things that I just said in a real way.
Yeah.
And obviously it's just been a little while, and we all have to give ourselves credit. I think it's okay to be grief-stricken a little bit and to figure out what that means, and take the time in that, and then know that humanity will continue on. We'll keep going. Lots of good people voted for Trump. Lots of good people voted for Harris, and we're all gonna. in hopes that we are going to be the ones who are going to move things forward. But I think it's also okay to just say, right now, I don't know, and I'm okay just to be okay with that.
Yeah.
And I can be sad.
Yes. I can be sad and I can grieve, and you can understand that it's not just because my team lost.
No, because I'm the least competitive person in this world. The least competitive person. So,
I like that. I like hearing that.
Yeah. It's really not about, it's just trying to, embody the advice that we are saying and actually put that into my own self, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
Because obviously we all have fault biases.
Yes.
We all, have racist, moments,
Yeah.
and these things we have to combat constantly.
Right.
So it can come out in my own rhetoric. It can come out in my mind. Sometimes it's clouded. And so it's taking all of the things again, which is why conversation is so good, because it puts you back to know, like, no, this is what I want. This is who I am. This is the way that I want to carry forward, and not let those things overcome your whole body.
Yeah.
And then to move forward.
Yeah.
From that.
Yeah. You have to like ground yourself and regroup. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So you wrote this thing
Yes.
and you posted it on Facebook.
Yes.
Reluctantly.
Yes.
And what was the response?
The response from women was very encouraging, that they also too related to it in some way. And again, I don't think that I don't think that was political really in any sense. I think they felt connected to the story.
Yes, because you were just telling your family story.
I was just telling a family story. And so somewhere within that, they also either recognized that in them or applauded me for, putting this out or whatever. So overwhelmingly positive from the women who commented. And then I did have from men, and not a lot, but their take was just a little bit different.
Well, every man who commented, or just some of the men who commented?
Just on the actual comment, there was only one man. But then, like, in other realms of communication, there were other people who reached out.
Okay.
And so there was, I would say that the more majority is confusion.
Yeah.
I think it's an overwhelming amount of confusion from the men. From the men. They're confused. And I think that's genuine. I think it's they're curious. They don't see the connection. They're confused. I'm not 100% sure, but that was the underlying tone. Yeah. Confusion. How did these things go together?
Okay. Give us some examples.
Some examples was, what does this whole situation, meaning the election, have to do with women? Okay. One obviously was the salty, which we know means
somebody sent you some salt shaker emojis.
Salt shakers. So I assume it's like, oh, you're mad about it, or missing the point about what I'm saying, that I'm just so devastated by it, or whatever. I guess again, that's up for interpretation. Yeah. That's how I took it. So I guess that matters in the sense of how it made me feel. And then also some others just saying, what about men's rights, or what about elderly? And all of those, I am the biggest advocate for men. Also, yes, I am a huge advocate. Like, I want people to thrive, and we keep saying that over and over and over. I don't want anybody to lose anything. Yeah. But again, it's triage, and then it's confusing. They seemed confused.
Yes. Well, and you're a military wife.
I am.
And so when you say you're for men, you've seen men be harmed in ways that a lot of us haven't, by the system, by women, and on and on. Yeah. And so, and we've talked through that a lot. And so when you say you're for men, you're not here to be like pussy power. No. You're not like, this needs to be a matriarchy. No. I mean, not that would hurt anything, but that's not what we're fighting for.
No, I have penis earrings and I wear them proudly. Just the same. You do. Like, I do. Thanks, Steph. Yes. So yes, I'm not an anti-man or think that they do not, because again, especially my father, he was a great beacon to look up to of manhood. I don't know what,
yeah.
I don't know what really but there was never a moment where I was like, and again, because it was a good, loving relationship.
Yes.
And so I see what that healthily looks like.
Right.
And so I know that can be, and that comes into play
Yes.
with all of that. And so, yeah, men also have rights and need things.
And you care about the elderly.
And I care about the elderly.
Like you care about everybody who you didn't list in your.
Of course.
But so you processed great emotion through telling family stories of strong, powerful women.
Mm-hmm.
Women applauded.
Mm-hmm.
Men were confused.
Men were confused.
I just think that's so not ironic.
Right? Right?
That's
right?
so okay.
Yeah.
We are really missing each other here.
Yes.
Oppressed people can find a connection
Yes.
that people who have not experienced oppression cannot find.
Yes. Yes. So the commonality of obviously the oppression that women in general do feel, obviously the women then relate to that, and the men seemingly
Don't get it.
Yeah.
On that note, and not that we have time to continue going around and around, do you think that women still experience oppression right now?
Yes, I do.
In any type of patriarchal society, there some people who everybody holds different standards for what they think life should look like, but what a woman's role is in society, in a home, in a church, in a business, et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, we do still think that a lot of people be like, everybody's equal now. What's your problem?
Right.
And we have directly experienced oppression because we do not have penises.
The injustices have not directly impacted me in the way that I'm thinking, like women's health care. I mean, those things do affect me, but I just mean in the overwhelming way that it does with some women. I still hope that we could look and hear their stories and say, yeah, I would call that oppression. And how do we fight that?
Right.
I would hope that we could do that for all things.
Yes.
But that we could take a moment and say, even though it might not be directly impacting me, I could see how this does affect my broader life, and how it could impact me or my daughter or my friends, and then hear their stories and say, yeah, what do we need to do to change that? Obviously, we don't work in corporate America where it is rainbow. So that's something that I have to take somebody else's experience and believe them.
I just believe
I have
their
to
story.
believe the women that is what is happening. And then say, no, we need change, and then stand on it and say, no, that's an injustice. And we need to do something about it.
Right.
Even though that's not a direct impact on my life.
Right.
I can see the trickle down.
Yes. I think that is really important. What you said is when someone shares their story with you, instead of looking for the things that might be different than what you think, or instead of thinking of ways that you disagree with them, just believe, like take their word, believe them. And then, like with your situation, all these men were confused.
Right.
Some of them, when you engage them in conversation because you're committed to doing that.
Right.
Some of them were like, as you explained, and conversation went back and forth and curiosity was shown. They were like, oh,
right.
okay, I can see that.
I can see that.
But not intuitively, they don't see it because they haven't experienced.
Correct.
And so then at that point, when you realize that you may not understand something that somebody else experiences, like making that a part of your heartbeat of like constantly coming to the table and saying, I probably am going to learn something new today, a lot of new things, and I need to humble myself and be able to hear what they're saying and believe them when they say it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of, with the healthcare thing specifically, and in a broader sense with women, I think a lot of it comes down to when you're thinking about the bully, and kind of back to that conversation, what you hear and what you see are people saying, we don't trust you to make decisions for yourself. We don't believe your story, and we think that we need to decide for you,
ourselves.
On your behalf, for you, because you obviously,
that's what the bully's saying.
That's what the bully's saying
is that we don't believe your story.
We don't believe your story. Like that's what seems like that's some of the sadness that I feel like in that was just saying, we don't. We just unfortunately we don't we don't believe you, and we don't think that you're responsible enough to make ethical decisions for yourself or for the people around you. That hurts deep. That hurts deep, especially coming from somebody who was told, in a sense, from the people around me that I could do anything and that I can make sound decisions and that I need autonomy over myself and I should be respected for myself and the people and all of these things. Like this is the narrative that has been told to you over and over and over. And then it comes down to it and they go, oh, ultimately, we just don't think that you're capable of doing that. I mean, that sets you back a little bit and you go, okay, well, talk about going in the past.
That's good. So are you glad you posted on Facebook?
I am.
Yeah.
I am. Yeah.
It started a lot of good conversations.
Yeah, it has.
Yeah.
It has. Beyond.
You going to do it more?
Maybe. We'll see. Wiped out.
We'll see.
We'll see how it goes. Although the more you post, it seems like the less people see. So, there's that too. We could break that down.
Oh, the algorithm.
Yeah.
Somebody making the decision for you of who's allowed to see your stuff and not.
Exactly.
Love that. Hey, thanks so much for joining us on this episode of You Don't Know, a Wayfind Collective podcast. We'd love to hear your thoughts about this episode, so always feel free to reach out and give us some feedback, especially if you want to share what your post-election creative outlet looked like. Like what we're doing, you can find more resources and donate directly on our website, wayfindco.com. Remember, we are a 501c3 nonprofit, so all donations are tax deductible. Today's episode was produced and narrated by Lindsey Migliori and Deanna West, with show graphics by Rebekah Williamson. Our intro and outro music is by Smile High featuring Antwaun Stanley. Wayfind Collective is a crowd-funded nonprofit. Our mission is to learn what it truly means to love your neighbor as yourself and unlearn everything that prevents us from doing that well. Everything we do is because of the generous support of many people just like you. So thank you from all of us at the Wayfind Collective for being a part of this project with us.